Is okay. So today we're going to carry on with our lessons as usual, and we're going to do another article by Bala Sulam, and that's called Disclosing a Portion Covering 2. And we'll try to get this through this article by today. It's not too long, but it is a deep article, and it explains to us how Kabbalists explain things in a revealed and in a concealed manner, so that the student who's studying can actually do some work in order to advance himself. So let's see what they have to say. Disclosing a portion, covering two. You can find this article on our website, Kabbalah.info, under the English language. It's under content, and there you can find all the articles. So let's read and let's see where we end up. Okay. There's an idiom among great sages. When they come to disclose a profound matter, they begin their words with, I'm disclosing a portion and covering two portions. Our sages took great care not to utter words needlessly. As our sages instructed, a word is a rock, silence is two. This means that if you have a priceless word whose worth is one rock, know that not saying it is worth two rocks. This refers to those uttering needless words without pertinent content or use except to decorate the tongue in the eyes of the beholders. This was strictly forbidden in the eyes of our sages, as is known to those who examine their words. Hence, we must be attentive to understand this common idiom of theirs. Three kinds of concealment of the wisdom. Obviously, when we're talking about the wisdom, we're talking about the wisdom of Kabbalah. And this is how the sages taught, how they put forth this wisdom. So three kinds of concealment of the wisdom. There are three parts to the secrets of the Torah. Each part has its own reason for being concealed. They're called by the following names: unnecessary, impossible, and lastly, the counsel of the Lord is with them that fear him. There's not a single fraction of this wisdom where scrutinies of these three parts do not apply, and I will clarify them one at a time. One is unnecessary. This means that no benefit will stem from its disclosing. Of course, this is not such a great loss because there is only the issue of the cleanness of the mind here, to warn of those actions defined as so what, meaning so what if I did this, there is no harm in it. But you should know that in the eyes of the sages, the so what is considered the worst corrupter. This is because all the destructors in the world, those that have been and those that will be, are the so what kind of people. This means that they occupy themselves and others in needless things. Hence, sages would not accept any student before they were certain that he would be cautious in his ways so as not to reveal what was not necessary. All right, so this is something we need to understand. The Kabbalists in the past, when they were conveying the wisdom, they were quite strict with how they took students in. And the reason they were strict about it is because they wanted to make sure that the wisdom was given to someone who would really value the wisdom. So it wasn't just taught to anyone. And sometimes they even forbade students. They said, you cannot learn, such as we see this example at the time of Ari's death. He also ordered his students, except Chaim Vital, that they are not allowed to study the wisdom of Kabbalah. So just before his passing away, this is what he said to his students: you're forbidden to study it any further. So we see that there are times when a Kabbalist is very strict, so he doesn't simply give away the wisdom. So he wants to ensure that everything is taught in such a way that it is purposeful, because unnecessary things consume the minds of people with unnecessary details which are not useful to attaining any certain goal. So the Kabbalists are very straightforward kind of guys. They have a no waste time policy. So everything they write is strictly directed towards the goal, towards the purpose, and what they want to attain, and what they want to convey to the student, so that the student can also attain what they mean. So the prohibition of not talking about unnecessary things is simply not just because it's a waste of time, but it also consumes the mind of a person with irrelevant things, irrelevant details. So they say rightfully, you know, whenever you've got a person who says, well, so what? You know, this is just mindless action. So being a so what kind of person is like always doing things that have absolutely no value in life. And this is why it says this is the worst kind of people, because they waste life, they corrupt the purpose. The second is impossible. So let's see what that means. This means that the language does not compel them to say anything of their quality due to their great sublimity and spirituality. Hence, any attempt to clothe them in words may only mislead the examiners and deflect them to a false path, which is considered the worst of all iniquities. Therefore, to reveal anything in these matters, permission from above is required. This is the second part of the concealment of the wisdom, yet this permission too requires explanation. So impossible simply means there's nothing I can tell you about something that can make you understand the matter. So imagine a person who's blind completely from birth. There's no way I can really explain to that person how beautiful the orange sunset is or how beautiful the blue ocean is, simply because that person has no way of really, you know, relating to that thing. So it's really impossible to convey something to that person regarding a certain matter because it's sublime, it's spiritual, and the person is not yet there. So the Kabbalists call that situation, it's an impossible situation. What's there to talk about? Now he's going to explain to us what permission from above is. This is explained in the book The Gate of Rashbi's Words by the Ari. In the Zohar, Parashat Mishpatim, page 100, it reads as follows: Know that some of the souls of the righteous are of the surrounding light kind, and some of them inner light kind. Those that are of the surrounding light kind have the power to speak of the secrets of the Torah by way of concealment and intimation. So their words will be understood only by those worthy of understanding them. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's soul was of the surrounding light kind. Hence, he had the power to clothe the words and teach them in a way that even if he taught them to many, only the worthy of understanding would understand. This is why he was given permission to write the book of Zohar. The permission was not granted to write a book in this wisdom to his teachers or to the first ones who preceded them, even though they were certainly more proficient in this wisdom than he. But the reason is that they did not have the power to address the matters as he did. This is the meaning of what is written: Yochai's son knew how to guard his ways. Now you can understand the great concealment in the book of Zohar, written by Rashbi, that not every mind can grasp his words. His words, in essence, explaining matters in the wisdom of truth, is not dependent whatsoever upon the greatness or smallness of the Kabbalist sage. Rather, it is about the illumination of a soul dedicated to this. The illumination of the soul is considered giving permission from above to disclose the higher wisdom. We therefore learn that one who has not been rewarded with this permission must not make clarifications in this wisdom, as he cannot clothe the subtle matters in their suitable words in a way that will not fail the students. For this reason, we did not find a single book in the wisdom of truth that precedes Rashbi's The Book of Zohar, since all the books in the wisdom prior to his are not categorized as interpretations of the wisdom. Instead, they're mere intimations without any order of cause and consequence, as it is known to those who find knowledge, thus far understanding his words. I should add, as I had received from books and from authors, that since the time of Rashbi and his students, the authors of the Zohar, until the time of the Ari, there was not a single writer who understood the words of the Zohar and the Tikkunim like the Ari. All the compositions before his time are mere inklings in this wisdom, including the books of the sage Ramak. And the same words that were said about the Rashbi should be said about the Ari himself, that his predecessors were not given permission from above to disclose the interpretations of the wisdom, and that he was given this permission. And also, this does not distinguish any greatness or smallness at all, since it is possible that the virtue of his formers was much greater than the Ari's, but they were not given permission for it at all. For this reason, they refrained from writing commentaries that relate to the actual wisdom, but settled for brief intimations that were not in any way linked to one another. For this reason, since the book of the Ari appeared in the world, all who study the wisdom of Kabbalah have left their hands from all the books of the Ramak, and all the first and the great ones that preceded the Ari, as it is known among those who engage in this wisdom. They have attached their spiritual lives solely to the writings of the Ari in a way that the essential books considered proper interpretations of this wisdom are only the book of Zohar, the Tikkunim, and following them, the books of the Ari. So this is an important thing. Permission from above. Okay, sometimes when the Kabbalists write, it sounds a little, mystical. Permission from above. It's as if the Creator is giving the person a permission. Well, in a sense, it's true, because if you think about it, all of us have a certain ability in something. And same goes for spirituality. So Rashbi had this special ability, just like a person has a talent in this world. He had the ability to clothe spirituality in really, in such a way that only those people who were in attainment could actually understand the sources. So his writings were all interpretations of pretty much he wrote about the whole of the book of the 5 books of Moses. You could say Zohar is also an interpretation of the 5 books of Moses, but the way he wrote it is in a concealed manner, where only students who have an attained mind could actually understand the spiritual concepts that are in that book. So for many people who read the book of Zohar, for them, it could be morals, it could be stories, allegories, or legends, and all kinds of stories. But for a person, for a Kabbalist, let's say, who's in spiritual attainment, the Zohar is a completely different book, because it talks about the spiritual levels of a person. And from those spiritual levels, a person actually can come to his correction. He can actually build his spirituality upon those. So actually that permission is the ability to clothe spirituality in such words that the other person can actually read it, read it and attain it, and actually find themselves or find their spirituality in those books. And it is not obviously for anyone off the street. So a person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah has to learn from a Kabbalist how to study, and those attainments afterwards, spiritual attainments, then become for him a revelation. So as he reads the book of Zohar, he begins to understand how to relate spiritual concepts, because he begins to live the book in his emotions. So permission from above, you can consider it like, sounding a little mystical and so forth. But if you think about it, you could also say, as a special person who knows how to write in such a way that it captures the reader, captivates the reader. So just like a talented writer or novelist, A Kabbalist also has that special attribute where he can write things in such a way, in such a style, that it's only for a person who's going up the ladder of spirituality. And that permission, obviously, he discusses here, is given to a person who should deliver it to the generation, because it's not about whether he's a great Kabbalist or not. It's a matter of the time being ripe for it to be written, for it to be prepared, so that a generation can use it. And down the track also is saying the same things about the books of Ari, because until the books of Ari, nobody really could decipher the Zohar. And Ari was the first person who actually compiled it in such a way that all the spiritual degrees were concise. They were all written in a scientific way. It was all organized in such a way that it was like, from beginning to end, it was like a nice textbook. And this is what Ari had done. And before Ari, none of the Kabbalists really had this kind of a structural approach to learning spirituality. Therefore, they all just had writings and texts and bits and pieces from here and there, which you couldn't really put together in order to convey the method of spirituality. So what Ari did was something really, really special. After Rashbi, he put everything into a methodology. So from Ari onwards, everybody who was really seriously engaging in the wisdom of Kabbalah was following the path of the Ari, because the way he put it, everything, designed everything and put everything together was really so structured so the person could actually start studying like we study at university or college. When we have a course, it's really structured from A to Z, and that's what really Ari did. Obviously, spirituality is something we attain through emotions and sensations, and then make sense out of it. Here, the way that Ari is also put everything together in a structured way is really useful, simply because this is how the new generation of people started to exist, because this is the time of the Renaissance period, where humanity was now beginning to lighten up. So after the medieval years, when now science, culture, art was beginning to open up, a new humanity was beginning to emerge. So this birth process of this new humanity was the right time, and it was the right time for Ari to bring the wisdom of Kabbalah into structured learning. So since the time of the Ari, nobody is really studying any other book other than what he has written. Let's see if there are any questions so far. So far, we don't have anything. Okay. Number 3. The counsel of the Lord is with them that fear him. This means that the secrets of the Torah are revealed only to those who fear his name, who keeps his glory with their hearts and souls, and who never commit any blasphemy. That is the third part of the concealment of the wisdom. This part of the concealment is the strictest, as this kind of disclosure has failed many. From the midst of those stem all the charmers, the whisperers, and practical Kabbalists who hunt souls with their cunningness, and the mystics who use withered wisdom that came from under the hands of unworthy students to draw bodily benefit for themselves or for others. The world has suffered much from it and is suffering still. You should know that the root of the concealment was only this part. From here, the sages took excessive strictness in testing the students, as they said, heads of chapters are given only to a chief justice and to one whose heart is worried. And Maaseh Bereshit is not to be explored in pairs. Neither is Merkavah to be explored alone. So there are many others like that, and all this fear is for the above reason. For this reason, few are the ones who have been rewarded with this wisdom. And even those who passed all their tests and examinations are sworn by the most serious oaths to not reveal anything of those three parts. Do not misunderstand my words, in that I have divided the concealment of the wisdom into three parts. I do not mean that the wisdom of truth itself is divided into these three parts. Rather, I mean that these three parts stem from every single detail of this wisdom, since they are the only three manners of scrutiny that are always applied to this wisdom. However, we should ask, if it is true that the firmness of the concealment of the wisdom is so strict, from where were all the thousands of compositions in this wisdom taken? The answer is that there is a difference between the first two parts of the last part. The prime burden lies only in the above third part, for the reason explained above. But the first two parts are not under constant prohibition. This is because sometimes an issue in the unnecessary is reversed, stops being unnecessary for some reason, and becomes necessary. Also, the part impossible sometimes becomes possible. This is so for two reasons, either because of the evolution of the generation or by being given permission from above. As it happened to the Rashbi and to the Ari, and to smaller extent to their formers. All the genuine books written in the wisdom emerge from these discernments. This is what they mean by their idiom, I am disclosing a portion and covering two portions. They mean that it happened that they revealed a new thing that was not discovered by their predecessors. And this is why they imply that they are only revealing one portion, meaning he is revealing the first part of the three parts of concealment and leaves two parts concealed. This indicates that something happened, which is the reason for that disclosure. Either the unnecessary received the form of necessary, or permission from above was granted, as I have explained above. This is the meaning of the idiom, I'm disclosing a portion. The readers of these tracts, which I intend to print during the year, should know that they are all innovations which are not introduced purely as such in their precise content in any book preceding mine. I received them mouth to mouth from my teacher, who was authorized for it, meaning he too received from his teachers mouth to mouth. And although I had received them under all the conditions of covering and watchfulness, by the necessity introduced in my essays, Time to Act, the unnecessary part has been inverted for me and became necessary. Hence, I have revealed the portion with complete permission, as I have explained above. Yet I will keep the other two portions as I am commanded. So Baal Islam wrote this article, and the reason he wrote it is because he wants to convey to the whole of humanity why spirituality is important and why it must be studied in our time. Because he understood that we were in the last generation, and all of humanity, as we can see now in the 21st century, is part of the last generation, simply because we're living in a global village. Right now, we're all going through this global turmoil called COVID-19, coronavirus. And it has basically imprisoned all of us. It has imprisoned us in our homes, in our countries. We are no longer free to do anything. And this is a global situation. Just like there's global trade, global banking, the environment, which is a global issue, we also have this global virus. So it turns out that Baal Islam understood that the whole world was entering a new state. So what was previously unnecessary now became necessary, and he opened up the wisdom of Kabbalah. And he opened it up because of the necessity to do so, because humanity has now entered a new stage. So we also must actually start looking at ourselves. So a lot of people sometimes ask, well, why are we teaching other people? Well, there's a reason we teach other people, simply because the whole world is integrated into one integral unit. So one country cannot exist on its own. And one person also cannot exist without other people. So just like countries are interdependent on each other to survive, so are people. And this means that with all the global events occurring to us, it means that every country in the world is really connected and tied in some way to another country. So when we're in such a global system, we understand there's a shift in the way we, in how life is working out. So that shift now makes things possible to open things that were previously not possible. And this is why what was unnecessary before became necessary. Why? Because now people have the mind to understand that we're living in a special time period as the whole of humanity, where we all have to make this paradigm shift. We all have to move to a higher level of consciousness. So Baal Haslam, having seen that really 100 years ago, started writing all kinds of articles in the earlier part of the 20th century, in the 1900s. So he already understood that the world was becoming global. It was already it was already integral. It was already, everything was connected in such a way that no country was really independent and no person was really independent from other people in the world. So having that revelation, having that understanding, he felt obviously the need to explain this new situation so that he could help humanity understand, the purpose of life, which way we're going in life, what do we need to attain in life? Because as we go forward and forward in life, especially in the 21st century, we begin to discover that our life is becoming more and more meaningless. We're not finding things that really give us pleasure. Life isn't really satisfying. And from all sides, we're getting really squashed, environmentally, socially, epidemic-wise. Also, there's a lot of social unrest all over the place. It's not just the US where they're, rioting out there on the streets. The whole world is going through this change. And the reason we're going through this change is because humanity has to come to a new level of existence. And this current state is no longer satisfactory. So there's an inner explosion in humanity. And the reason this inner explosion has to happen is because it's like a growth spurt for kids. When when children have these growth periods, they all of a sudden go through this growth time period where they grow. And this is the same thing that humanity is going through. So we all have to do this growth. We can't remain as kids. And there's only one way to do this without suffering, and that's through consciously educating ourselves about what we have to do in life and what the meaning of life is, what the purpose of life is, why we live, why we exist in life. And this is what, this is the whole purpose of Baal Hassalam's articles when he started writing. So same here at B'nai Baruch, we try to teach as much as we can. Obviously, we don't charge anything for it because spirituality is something we don't trade off, we don't do business of. He also nicely writes it here. If you paid attention, he says, he said a lot of people took the wisdom and turned it into all kinds of mystical things to use it for their material benefit. All kinds of things they did with the wisdom of Kabbalah. So if you go onto the internet, you'll find all kinds of things about the wisdom of Kabbalah, such as charms and, I don't know, all kinds of red strings and holy water, things that they sell you, and which is all part of material world and has nothing to do with the authentic original wisdom of Kabbalah at all. Because the original wisdom of Kabbalah is really trying to direct a person to come to the purpose of life. That's what the wisdom of Kabbalah is really for. It's not for attaining anything corporeally or materially in this world. However, though, as we advance in spirituality, we get this higher understanding and higher consciousness, which is actually a great benefit for our corporeal life as well, because we can only understand where we are if we go to a higher level of existence. And the reason humanity is suffering from so many psychological issues like depression, violence, family breakups, nobody understands anybody. Everybody's, in conflict one way or another with somebody or with everybody. The reason we don't understand, we're going through these phases because we don't understand our current situation, and we cannot understand ourselves from this current situation. So we have to go one level up, because we are at a higher level in existence than animals, than plants, and the still level. We can understand those levels. For example, we can understand biology, which is our animate nature. So we understand how the body works. We understand how plants work with the science of botany. We understand physics, chemistry. These are all sciences of the still level. But when it comes to humanity, we don't understand ourselves. And we can't understand ourselves unless we go one level higher. So studying the wisdom of Kabbalah as well, attaining spirituality, really allows you actually to understand your corporeal existence as well. And this is also a great bonus. And it also opens up for you a whole new reality where you can actually start developing yourself in a higher level of consciousness. And obviously, growing up and coming to that higher level of consciousness eases your life. It brings understanding, and you just become a mature person rather than remaining like a little kid, because life pushes us to grow. And also we need to grow spiritually, not just bodily, but we need to grow in our understanding about life as well. And our next level of development as humanity is this higher level of consciousness, which we must attain. Our failure to do so will just increase the amount of suffering humanity goes through. Just like children are pressured if they don't catch up with their peers, we too, if we don't catch up with where we're supposed to be, with respect to where we are currently, according to that difference, we're going to feel suffering. So the more a person works and studies and tries to advance himself in his spirituality, the suffering is also reduced, because accordingly, you're becoming more balanced with nature. And all of our problems in life is because we lack this balance with nature. So we have to adapt ourselves to laws of nature. Same with this COVID-19 problem we're going right now. So a lot of people say, well, the fittest will survive. There's no such law in nature as the fittest will survive. One who adapts survives, not the strongest. So we already have this misunderstanding about life that, the stronger countries will survive. No, that's not going to happen. Who can adapt to these new situations, they will survive. And the only way to adapt to a changing world is to balance yourself to the laws of nature and what nature is pushing us towards. So Baal Islam wrote this article in order to explain to people the necessity that humanity has come to for spiritual advancement, that this is now a necessity. We cannot delay this. And the article he wrote here is simply to explain why he's opening up this wisdom that's been concealed and was hidden for thousands of years. It's a good article for us to know, because it allows us to try and understand Baal Islam. Obviously, he was a great man, so understanding him, it's not a simple thing. But the more we read his articles, the more we study, the more we get into his teachings, obviously it'll give us some kind of a connection with him. And there is one question from Francesco. He's asking, few are the ones who have been rewarded with this wisdom. Does this mean that I have been awarded even if I think I don't deserve it? Well, first of all, a person who discovers the wisdom of Kabbalah and comes to study that already in its in its own right, I think is priceless. Because we don't find a lot of things in life that answer all our questions about life. So for a person to come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, to study it, to delve into it, to find all the answers to his questions about life is already a blessing. So you could say you're definitely rewarded. But the real reward of the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah is attaining spirituality, is attaining the thought of nature, is attaining this higher level of existence where you flow in nature, beyond your corporeal existence. Currently, we live in this body that just rots away, dies, and so on. And the whole new generation is constantly reborn. So humanity is moving from one reincarnation to another and developing in such a way. But that development needs to, at some point, take us to a higher level of existence. And achieving that high level of existence is called the real reward. And that's what we should all be aiming for. So coming to the wisdom of Kabbalah to study is half the job, and the other half is for us to study and attain. It's continuing with this question, Francesco. The same way we've been rewarded, can the Creator take away? Well, if a person doesn't want, he certainly can. And I must admit, throughout the years that I've been studying, I've been studying for the past 20 years now. And I can certainly say I've seen a fair amount of people who've come, looked at it, studied it, and left. If you don't have a desire, there's no way the Creator is going to keep you on the boat, simply because imagine a relationship. So you can't really hang out with someone who doesn't want to hang out with you, or you don't want to hang out with them. So this is really not going to work. And same with the Creator. So the Creator makes this gesture, it's like a little flirt. And if the person holds that hand, and then studies, moves forward, does all he can, then it becomes a mutual relationship you develop with the Creator. Other than that, though, a person's life is just, well, he's born, he lives a few years, and he ends up dead, rotting under the ground. Other than that, what do we have in life? Nothing really. So it depends on the desire of the person, and the Creator is not pushy. He awakens a person, brings the person to the study, to the environment where he can make something out of himself, and whether that person does his part is up to him. And that's actually where he's got some free choice in wanting to voluntarily develop his soul or not. These are certainly fair questions. And I think one more question here. How should we use our body correctly to move closer to spirituality? Well, there's nothing we can use about our corporeal body. The wisdom of Kabbalah doesn't talk about our corporeal body at all. We're only focusing on developing our spiritual side, which is our soul. And the soul is completely disconnected from the body. This is why the body can be burnt, can be buried, can rot. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't influence our soul. So we don't use the body in any way for spiritual correction, but the body is just there for us to use as a tool until we attain spirituality. So the body really means us living in a desire to receive pleasure for ourselves. That's what the body means. Corporeality in the wisdom of Kabbalah is to live in the desire to receive for myself. So if I'm living in a desire to receive pleasure for myself, it's called corporeality. But if I was to change that, and if I was to live in bestowal, then my perception of reality would obviously shift to a different sensation. And that different sensation of existence is called spirituality, which is completely disconnected from our corporeality. At the moment, the only thing we can really do with our corporeality is bring it here to study, to learn, and so on, and use it in order to build our soul. And the reason we have a body is because it is the lowest form of existence. And from that lowest form of existence, we have to build upwards, to build the structure up. there we go. I think that's all the questions. Those are all the questions that we have today. Like I said, it was a nice short article that we were able to finish in one lesson. And I think it's worth understanding why Bala Salam was so keen on writing all these articles, writing the 6 volumes of the study of the 10 Sephirot. He also did the ladder commentary on the Zohar. So he spent all his life pretty much writing and preparing his books for our generation. He really prepared the whole wisdom of Kabbalah so that we can actually take it and use it and actually attain spirituality. So his reason for why he was writing all this, his reason for why he wanted to open up the wisdom of Kabbalah is what we just read here in this article. So why disclosing the wisdom, why disclosing the importance of spirituality and its attainment was a necessary thing. And for our generation, it definitely is. Because beyond this, humanity will not be able to find any corporeal fulfillment in life, and life will just get worse and worse. As we move forward in life, we'll see also towards the autumn and winter, unemployment will increase. Many countries will have riots. I hope there won't be a war because it's not looking too great. We're definitely having a lot of natural disasters. Natural disasters are much, much better than having a war, simply because natural disasters keep countries occupied so they don't go out and kill each other. And also hopefully this epidemic will not stop, because it really calms humanity down. It stops us from fighting with each other. And the world is at a critical state right now where where everybody's at a high level of testosterone. So everybody's running wild. And if we didn't have this pandemic, this virus, we would have, possibly had a big risk of war globally. So we really sometimes need to be thankful that we're getting something from the negative side, but it's actually stopping something, which is far worse. Okay, so dear friends, we'll end our session today. And we've finished the article. We'll come back again next Tuesday, start a new article and move forward. In the interim, take care of yourselves. And if you're joining the morning lessons, I'll see you guys there. Have a great evening or a day, depending where you are. All the best. Bye-bye.